everybody. Welcome back to Babu's Frickin' Podcast. It's Star Wars Sunday. Thank you so much for joining us again live on YouTube in our galaxy far, far away. My name is Mike Chiodi Ruby, and as always, I'm joined first by Grand Moff Mark Valentine. Mark, tell us again, who is your favorite mayor of Mos Espa? What's that cat's name?
Mokshays.
Are you sure? What's that hammer-headed fellow's name?
My name is Mokshays. I don't know what to do with this.
I just enjoy the gravelly Boba Fetted Grand Moff Mark Valentine. So thank you for indulging us with that. Rounding out our Jedi Council, none other than Brian Porkins Lee, back fresh from the warm sands of Hawaii. Brian, how was the trip, dude?
I was looking for the Death Star plans. I could not find them, so I just decided to go other places.
File under Stardust, bro. It's her.
Look at this. Look who just popped into comments. The man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Brian Pohl himself. Big shout out to Brian.
Brian Biggs Dark Lighter Pohl.
Hanging out with us live here on the YouTubes. Big shout out. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Again, a programming note for those who have been listening to the audio-only podcast. We have been live streaming the Book of Boba Fett, so we will be engaging with our audience throughout the course of this podcast. If you hear us talking to random people, that's who we're talking to. But if you are one of our audio-only download listeners and you would love to get in on the live stream action, we live stream every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be doing so for the Book of Boba Fett. But let's be honest, gentlemen, we like this. This has been really fun. So there's a very good chance that this is going to continue in perpetuity, but to be continued on that front.
Yeah, perpetuity if our wives don't divorce us first.
True. Very true.
So keep tuning in, like, subscribe, and best of all, share and tell your friends if you like what you hear. We're eager to continue growing out our community. But we're going to mix things up in terms of our format a little bit this week. So for the first two episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, we've been doing deep dives into the episodes. But this week, we're going to break things up a bit. So, yep, we're still going to hit the highlights, but then we're also going to take some time in the second half of our episode to explore the profound influence of Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, on the Book of Boba Fett and on the wider Star Wars Mandoverse and universe. So let's get right in. Episode 3, The Streets of Mos Espa. Gentlemen, this episode has spurred some toxicity among the Star Wars fan base. We're non-toxic here on Babu's Frickin' Podcast, but what are your takes overall on the Streets of Mos Espa?
Well, let's start with Brian, because he was away from us and he was over in Hawaii. We didn't even get his take on episode 2. So Brian, tell us 2 and then 3.
2 and 3. Here we go.
We got some catching up to do with you, man.
More like the Streets of Mos Vespa, am I right? The second episode, I really thought it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the Tusken Raider bit with the train, and the droid that drives the train I thought was kind of a lot of fun. I enjoyed a lot of that, including Captain Marvel's stunt double being the main bad A Tusken Raider. I thought that was a lot of fun. Really nothing to complain about. I enjoy the flashback stuff, but we'll talk more about it. I wish we were getting more out of the flashback stuff.
Yeah.
I liked how this week we didn't spend as much time in the flashback stuff because of how we were ripped out of it. I thought that was a lot of fun with Black Chrysanthemum, but overall, I struggled with this episode, to be 100% honest.
I think we all did. And I sat in with the Galactic Council on the Florida Park Explorers Network. And those guys, they're very non-toxic too. We had a really tough time on that show as well. I
don't think we're going to have a tough time necessarily. There's stuff this week that I really, really liked.
It was good. Yep.
But I'm not in. I'm not in on the Power Rangers, and
speak for yourselves. I think on this.
I know. I think Mike liked it a lot.
Loved the third episode. I really did. I think there's some stuff that's clunky. I'll admit that, and we'll talk about it in a bit. But I loved that it introduced brand new things that we had never seen before. I loved a whole bunch of the Easter eggs that we're going to get to. I love that Machete trains Rancors.
Yes.
There is so much that I loved about this episode, even though I will admit there's some clunkiness that we'll talk about. But before we get into the key themes, We're going to kick off a new segment here on Babu's Frickin' Podcast where we look at all the hidden and not so hidden gems of the show. You could call them Easter eggs, but it's Star Wars. So these are the Mudhorn eggs. So let's dive in. Our first Mudhorn egg, Stephen Root as Lortha Peel, the watermonger who comes to make a claim in front of Boba Fett. Mark, you want to talk to us a bit about Stephen Root?
Yes, excuse me. Somebody has my stapler. I believe someone has my stapler. I'm going to burn. I'm going to burn this monastery down. I'm going to burn it down. I ordered a Mai Tai. This is clearly not a Mai Tai.
Dude, but if we think about like actors with range, is there anybody better than Stephen Root? I mean, Man in the High Castle, Get Out, and then you've got him as his quote unquote typecast of Milton in Office Space and the guy in Dodgeball with the mail order wife. But Stephen Root for the win. I love that guy.
And one of the voices on King of the Hill. I mean, there is nothing Stephen Root can't do. I mean, he is remarkable.
I love
remarkable.
Him. I love him.
Love me some Stephen Root, and he I enjoyed his groveling watermonger, and his entire spiel. You know, trying to ever so delicately tell Boba Fett that no one respects him. Fantastic.
We're not done with him either. So
not me. I'm offended on your behalf.
Yeah. Second awesome character actor making his debut, Danny Trejo, Machete himself as the Rancor Keeper. We'll have more on him later, but guys, how did you feel seeing Danny Trejo roll up in all his glory next to a Rancor?
We knew that Danny Trejo was showing up somewhere. It's a Robert Rodriguez project. We just didn't know where. He is so perfect as the Rancor Keeper. It is about time that Danny Trejo is a part of the Star Wars universe. He should have been a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, much, much longer. He's wonderful. He's another great actor, but he is Robert Rodriguez's muse. Can we agree that if there is a project that Robert Rodriguez is doing, Danny Trejo is going to be a part of it in some form or fashion? So I giggled with delight.
I believe they're second cousins.
They are. They're related, and so he's been in everything from Desperado to Spy Kids to From Dusk Till Dawn and everything beyond and in between.
Danny Trejo's he's so good at what he does. I mean, he's iconic in his own way that, you know, people know him instantly. He is so recognizable. He did a really great job. And we'll get into the part that he played in this. He had a really important job in describing the mythos of the Rancors, and he nailed it. I mean, he did a really good job. He fit perfectly in the Star Wars universe.
Well, and speaking of mythos, you know, I think one of the really great Mudhorn eggs here from Danny Trejo is when he's talking about the Rancor, and he talks about how the witches of Dathomir used to ride the Rancors. Brian, you want to tell us about why the witches of Dathomir are a remarkable egg this week?
I mean, I'm not sure completely where you want me to go here, but I can go. Honestly, the best stuff for the Witches of Dathomir is in the video game Jedi Fallen Order. There's some really great stuff with them in there, but Dathomir is the home planet of Darth Maul. It is a matriarchal society, so the Witches of Dathomir, there's so much good stuff, especially as it relates to Asajj Ventress in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
But just I'm Boba Fett saying I'm seeing this thing and immediately I want to ride it. I want to ride it. Like, I thought it was absolutely great stuff. I loved it so much.
He has ridden larger creatures before.
Well, we'll come back to that. In fact, that is our next egg there. So Boba says he's ridden bigger creatures than the Rancor. He may very well be referring to, see if we pronounce this correctly, Pars Ichathodont.
I hope it's
a really big egg, and it comes from Mark's favorite piece of the Star Wars galaxy, the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Absolutely. I was watching the Star Wars Holiday Special this weekend. I broke out a case and a half of White Claws and sat back, and it all made sense.
By White Claw, you mean Zima?
No, we had the mango White Claws. it was refreshing. It was so wonderful.
It was delightful.
It was delightful.
So the big giant dinosaur that Boba Fett rides in on when we first meet him in the Star Wars Holiday Special. Shout out from there. Another pretty cool shout out. I don't know if you guys noticed, but during the Moss Vespa chase, there is a piece of Ralph McQuarrie concept art that the kids bust through. Like every street chase scene trope you could ever imagine, short of having like a baby in a carriage rolling out into traffic, happened in that chase scene. And one of them was, instead of a big plate of glass, there was a big piece of art there, and it's actually concept art of Jabba's palace from Ralph McQuarrie.
I wasn't sure you were going to fit that one in there. I think that deserves the ultimate in this segment of the ultimate Easter egg. I thought that was awesome. I recognized the art right away. You could tell Luke Skywalker was removed from it, because that would have been even funnier if Luke had been included. But I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Noticed it right away.
That was super cool. Another egg. I never really knew what these were. It's been cool to learn about them this week.
Really?
The Bomar monks.
Dude, I love the Bomar monks. We got them from the trailer too, by the way. So we knew that the Bomar monks were there. Most people know this as the spider from Return of the Jedi, that when R2-D2 and C-3PO walk into Jabba's palace, as the light is sort of piercing the darkness of Jabba's palace, you notice from behind them, there is a mechanical spider walking with, it just looks like a bulbous ball of goo and a brain sitting inside of it. So those are Bomar monks. They are from Star Wars canon. They are really fascinating. Jabba's palace, this is the history behind Jabba's palace, is it was a monastery that was taken over by Jabba and then inhabited, that he kind of took over this and then imprisoned the inhabitants of the place, who were called Bomar monks. To reach enlightenment, they shed their physical form and they transferred their consciousness and their brains in these devices, that their brains and their consciousness will then essentially live on forever in this enlightened state. And they are robotic, and that's legitimately their brains that are sitting inside of those jars. Jabba is obviously gone. So what we're led to believe is they have then been set free by someone or another, and now they're walking the grounds of Jabba's palace, wandering the universe like Kane in Kung Fu, Mike.
Yeah, going from place to place, getting into adventures. I think they've taken the vow of silence or the vow of chastity a bit too far. But if you want to rock it as a spider for the electronic spider the rest of your life, good on you, bro.
I'm just gonna wander the earth, Jules. You're gonna be a bum.
So speaking of outside Jabba's palace, another great Mudhorn egg, the wart, the big kind of toadstool looking thing, lashing out his tongue. We saw him eat a womp rat, in front of Jabba's palace from the special edition. This time we got there's always a bigger fish moment, as he reached out and grabbed a womp rat that was being picked up by a bird, or maybe he picked up the bird that was picking up the womp rat, swallowed the the horse to get the cow, to get the goat, to get the dog, to get the cat. I don't know why she swallowed the fly.
I think she dies. Whatever it was. I remember that when I was a kid. It was fascinating.
Yes. Scary as heck. We got some good new swear words in the Star Wars galaxy this week. So we had a bunch of dank ferrix.
Yeah, two to be exact. 2 dank ferrix.
2 dank ferrix. But we also got when Boba lets Black Chrysanthemum go, he tells him not to work for Skugholes.
I like that. I have to
like
use
that
that in
too.
sentence this week. Scughole.
There was one actor we didn't call out that I want to make sure we call out, and that's the voice of the Pike boss, and that is played by Phil Lamar, who has hundreds of voice acting credits. But for most importantly, he was Bail Organa in Star Wars Rebels. But even more importantly, he was Kit Fisto.
Mad TV.
Well, and even more importantly than that, to go back to the Pulp Fiction references that Mark's been making, he's Marvin.
He's Marvin. Yep.
Marvin, you got to have an opinion.
Wow, it's all connected.
It's all connected. So also another, this is the here's probably the hardest Easter egg to see. I didn't see it the first time I watched, but if we want the other famous actors cameo in this, there's a split second when Boba Fett goes to Mos Eisley where you can see Pelimato, Amy Sedaris's mechanic, walking with her with her droids and her giant
80s
crazy
flow. Yeah.
coming and going, you know. So that we know is the mechanic who watches after Grogu and repairs the Razor Crest. Rest in peace, Razor Crest. In 2 episodes, is it 2 or 3 episodes she appears in the Mandalorian?
I think just
She's
one episode
been-
5 and then season 2 episode 1. I
Yeah.
think that's it.
She's been in two
So
episodes as well.
and also, you know, some puns here. Boba goes to Mos Eisley to see the Pikes, but we also get to see some heads on Pikes. That was the, you know, we get to see, you know, the famous from the trailer of the Mandalorian, and then we see it when Mando goes to Mos Eisley. All of the stormtrooper helmets that end up on spears, we actually see them placing the helmets on the spears when Boba goes into the city. So that was pretty cool. And then 2 more. I loved when 8D8, the torture droid, is talking to Boba and Fennec and refers to the quote unquote sail barge disaster. Did you guys catch that?
Yeah, very cool that they, you know, they're really not explaining what exactly happened, and it's you know, there's somewhat of a mystery surrounding it, or there's a cover up. I just felt like Celine Dion should have accompanied that moment. There should have been my heart should have gone on in that moment.
But the most important part about that to me is you look at Bib Fortuna and you look like the guy has zero control over anything in his life, let alone the entire crime lord boss of Mos Espa. And then you learn he couldn't. He just had these really fractured relationships, and he let people just kind of do their own thing. That Bib Fortuna really wasn't the guy at all, because he just couldn't fill the holes that Jabba had left, that Boba's now trying to fill. And the 8D8 is I guess trying not to offend, because I think that's how Jabba ruled, is he killed you if you disagreed with him whatsoever. So 8D8's not willing to say anything either. So it's
that was such a clever back and forth.
Yeah.
Like the he who shall not be named, which was like a little veiled Voldemort kind of reference. And then he's like, you can say Jabba. And he's like, well, you know, I didn't want to upset you or embarrass you. And then it's like, now I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
Dude, he's killing it. He's such a great, I mean, Matt Berry is so good as 8D8. I mean, he is amazing on What We Do in the Shadows. He's just such a great comedian, because his vocal timing, and no matter what project he's doing, he's always pitch perfect. So him being the torture droid of all things is just, it's spot on. It's perfect casting.
You know, they got to feed him a gonk droid at some point to torture before the season is out.
Well, there's gonna, I mean, we don't know. We might be, I said this earlier this week, we might be getting the Major Domo. Like, he might be hitting that rancor pit really soon, or the Major Domo might be getting, he might be getting some time with 8D8 to find out where Mokshahiz is at this point.
Dude, I hadn't thought about that, but now I'm even more excited for this week's episode. But let's talk about let's talk about a couple of the big high points from episode 3.
One more Easter egg straight out of Star Wars Rebels, when the Major Domo runs into the fruit stand. It is a bunch of Melu Ran. I thought that was cool.
They are. It also, you know, a lot of people have been picking on. We'll talk about them in a minute. A lot of people have been talking about the biker gang, the scooter gang, whatever you want to call them.
The Power Rangers.
Some people have called them Power Rangers. Other people have called them Biff and his gang from Back to the Future 2. And so they were saying that, you know, the Major Domo sliding in sideways was very reminiscent of Biff sliding into the manure truck in Back to the Future.
Yes.
Strong with the references this show is. Let's talk about let's not ignore the not going to call it the elephant in the room. Let's not ignore the Wookiee in the room. We didn't have to wait long for the rumble, the big rumble in the jungle between Boba Fett and Black Chrysanthemum.
The bout following the Bacta.
We got a royal rumble of epic proportions with Black Chrysanthemum trying to take out Boba Fett while he was in his back-to-bath. Chrysanthemum takes on Boba. He takes on the street punks from Mos Espa. And then he full-on Goldberg-style spears both of the Gamorrean guards. He proceeds to bite the Gamorrean guard Morbius style. And I you know, here's where I have to admit, I felt like this fight scene was a little clunky from a fight choreography standpoint. I was really hoping we'd get more out of Boba and Chrysanthemum going at it. But I did love, like, from the point where, like, I shouted out loud when Chrysanthemum took the Gamorreans down, and I loved, and I guess it's canon from the comics as well. I loved his electric knucks.
Yeah.
I loved the spiked knuckles that he wore. What's your take on the rumble with Black Chrysanthemum, and then what plays out when he's left for dead by his employers, the twins?
Is it fair to say that Black Chrysanthemum went ham? I'll be here all day, ladies and gentlemen. It was cool. It had some really cool moments, and then there were moments that it was also really clunky. The very awkward bear hug that why did he stop? He would have
Wookiee hug.
Yeah, he would have snapped, but he would have snapped him in half. If he was trying to kill him in that moment, there was enough time for him to end Boba Fett. It was really great. The jump scare of him getting pulled out was really good. The fight with the Power Rangers, for better or worse, I don't know what to call them.
I call them the Mod Squad.
Yeah, the Mod Squad was cool. Like, seeing her having the vibro knife, and they had a litany of weapons, was really cool. Him bum rushing the Gamorreans and just straight up murking the Gamorreans and, like, taking a chunk out of the one's neck was really neat. The one complaint that I had, which I lodged on the Galactic Council, is the gentleman there had a problem with him being stealthily getting in. I took that on face value of, he's worked for Jabba. He knows the ins and outs of the palace. He knows how to get in and do so without being detected, because he spent enough time in Jabba's palace to know the cracks and the crevices to get in and out. That said, it was so awkward to me from a writing perspective. He stood right over the Rancor pit. He's worked there. He knows that there's a Rancor pit. So for him to get caught in that scenario, to stand right over it, was the only part of the fight sequence that just did not work for me.
Yeah, well, he was getting flanked and attacked by two giant pigmen. So, it's easy to lose your bearings when you got, pig one and pig two.
He just had so much more situational awareness in every other instance of that fight to be able to take on 5 and 6 assailants, that it seemed in that moment. I suspended my disbelief to say it's what had to happen to capture him, to incapacitate him. And I understood that it would have been better for me if in the fray, or in the scurry of things, he gets pushed randomly to that spot and then somebody hits it, rather than him just clumsily and very aloof, like, standing over the thing and be like, oh, that was the one thing that I had a small gripe with. Some people didn't like the choreography of the fight. I didn't have a problem with the choreography of the fight. He's big. We haven't really seen a Wookiee in hand-to-hand combat yet. So there's not a lot of reference in terms of, like, the speed. He's strong. He's super strong. But Wookiees don't have to be fast when they're that powerful. And like you said, the brass knuckles was really cool. Breaking out the gaffy stick again. The fact that Boba, like, he jams the gaffy stick into his body. He like straight up stuck him with it. And like, he got shanked with the knife. He got hit with the gaffy stick, and he was still holding it down. It was cool. Like, bring me more Black Chrysanthemum, please.
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed he ran away at the end. Like, one, where are you running to? And two,
awkwardly lumbered away.
Yeah. And I think he's gonna end up back with the crew.
I hope so.
At least that's what I'm hoping for. So I just wish they would have done that. Brian says, now does Black Chrysanthemum return and align with Boba at some point, come back and finish the job? I don't think he's going to finish the job. I think he's grateful, especially because he's not going to go back to the Hutts.
I want to ask the panel and the commenters, do you think at this point, though, he owes Boba Fett a life debt, given the fact that his life was Boba's to do whatever? His life was forfeit and Boba spared him. Does he owe a life debt?
I agree. I was bummed he didn't stay with him. I thought at that point, Boba just kind of let him go, and he, shuffled off like Padme, kind of running through the desert at the end of Attack of the Clones, like kind of clumsy style. But I was hoping he was going to stick around. I thought it was going to be like one of those, like, I don't have anywhere else to go, if your pig dogs will have me, let me join the posse.
Yeah,
It would be just
I think
awkward.
that
Yeah.
I think that's what's going to happen. But shout out to Tamara Morrison for he's put himself into some vulnerable situations on this show, fighting in your tidy whities and your long john like outfit. Like I've seen him in situations that I don't even want my wife to see me in. Like, good for him for owning it and just going for it. But I'm curious to see how Boba would have been able to hold up had he had his full armor in that situation. Because Black Chrysanthemum at this point seems to be as unbeatable as anybody else we've ever seen on screen one-on-one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. We've never seen a man fight a Wookiee in his underwear before. Let's talk about the Rancors. So I think one of the cool things this week, we've talked a bit about, Danny Trejo, excuse me, the Rancor keeper. He introduced a lot that is explained, one, why Moochie in the Bad Batch was so sweet when, he's rescued by the Bad Batch and he's this cute little thing. And we actually got a bit of retconning as to why the Rancor Keeper from Jabba's palace was so weepy in Return of the Jedi after Luke killed him.
I don't know if
I thought it was
retcon's the word. I just
really,
think explanation is.
yeah. So I mean, let's talk a little bit about the emotional complexity of the Rancor. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I think everything that they did with the Rancor, I think everything having Danny Trejo as he's that gruff personality. I think he was really, really great in that role, as we've talked about many times already. But talking about how it's gonna make that connection with the first human that it sees, and Danny Trejo knowing his role in that of he's the trainer, he's not meant to be the one that is the mama, for lack of a better term, and Boba's fascination with it, I thought was really good. That really jumped off the screen for me, and how disappointed he is when 8D8 comes in and interrupts the entire thing because he's just so ingrained in what he's doing there. I thought all of that, especially seeing the Rancor's point of view when he sees Boba, I thought all that was really, really well done. I really enjoyed that.
Did either of you think that maybe Danny Trejo was tricking him? I was a little worried that maybe it was going to be pulled the eye patch off and the Rancor was going to go for him, and that it was actually a bit of a trick. I was pleasantly surprised and delighted when he was telling the truth.
Yeah, and the Hutt's just simply saying, yeah, we sent Black Chrysanthemum to kill you. Sorry about that. Like, you take this and we're just gonna leave. Like, yeah, I thought it was a trick too.
Mark,
yeah.
what's your take on the Rancor relationship and the fact that it looks like Boba wants to ride him like a bantha?
Yeah, it's again, we talked about, Dathomir and getting, the backstory on the, the witches in Dathomir and the connectedness with where Rancors come from. Cool to see why Maliki from Return of the Jedi gets so upset when he dies, because clearly he was the human that the Rancor imprinted on. And it was neat to get, we like our second episode that we ever did was on creatures of the Star Wars universe. And it's part of the lore and the mythos of Star Wars that makes the world building so amazing, is that they have these really well thought out fauna throughout the galaxy. And so it was really cool for hardcore fans and diehard fans to get that mythology to be added and to become canon. Like, we've had Rancors in a lot of video games and a lot of expanded universe projects, but it's again nice that these guys get Star Wars and they understand the fan base, and they're wanting to do fan service in the greatest way possible, which is giving the fans exactly what they want, which a lot of this series has continued to do. But again, Danny Trejo set it up beautifully. Him imprinting on Boba Fett was a really cool visual, and you seeing through the eyes of the Rancor. And that relationship's going to be huge. He's not here anymore, but Derek from Satisfactual Sign Company and I were having a conversation earlier, and he said, I am all here for when Boba Fett rides that thing into Mos Espa. I'm right there with you. I cannot wait until he rides the Rancor and it becomes part of this show.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Mark, let's stick with you for a minute. So the last 2 weeks with our first two episodes, we've had Bible study with Brother Mark, as we've talked about the mirroring of Moses's journey in the Bible with what the experience has been for Boba Fett. things got changed up a little bit with us this week when we saw him return from Mos Eisley and found that the entire village was on fire, and it was quite emotional seeing the fallen chieftain, and they imply the death of the child that he had built a relationship with when he puts his little training gaffy stick in the fire. Tell us about where you think maybe the Bible analogy is going or not going from here.
Well, I mean, so definitely a curveball for the pure 10 Commandments narrative that it looked like we were getting, at least for the first 2 weeks. The tribe and his people are gone, but some people have said we didn't see a body yet for the female warrior. There's a good chance that she got away and she may go and migrate to another group of Tuscans. So it's not entirely gone. The concept of the Tuscans being gone, don't put that out to sea yet. It has not completely sailed, but the pure trope and a lot of what we were seeing and the parallels with Moses and like the epic filmmaking of 10 Commandments and the book of Exodus and the Old Testament stuff, some of it waned this week, but this credit is going, and I can't take pure credit for this because it really comes from David Rosen. He has an incredible podcast called the Modern Gods Podcast, and he and I had a back and forth on this, and he found this and he pointed it out, and he was the eagle-eyed viewer this week. David said the whole narrative with God telling Moses to talk to the rock and it will give him water. He gets frustrated and hits the rock instead. While it still gives him water, he's punished for that. So David said he saw that Boba having that choice between forcefully taking the water back that was stolen or going the peaceful route in many ways does again sort of lend itself from the story of Moses or just the liturgy itself. Like it doesn't purely echo Moses and that parable from the Bible, but water has now taken on significance in multiple episodes. Water in the Old Testament is very important, but water is very symbolic throughout the course of the Bible. I think that that's really awesome. But I think it is very possible that we are still getting influences from stuff that's from the Old Testament. But there are so many arcs from the Bible and from the story of both the Old and the New Testament that have wound up working their way into film and cinema. So I don't think that David is very far off on this, that it is very possible, because I focused on the rod and the staff last week and the gaffy stick having parallels. This week, it is also very possible that water is continuing to take on that significance, much in the way it did of the story and the life of Moses. It's very possible that they're continuing with that narrative, because you heard water being mentioned on multiple occasions now for 2 consecutive weeks. That it seems like in 4 instances there were discussions of water, once being on Tatooine. And now water is, again, a central negotiating point when they're talking about the street urchins. So I think it's very possible, like David says, that is the allegory that we're getting in this week. And thank you for that. Again, all the credit goes to him over on Modern Gods, but he is the contributor to Bible Time with Boba Fett this week.
Excellent. And a good segue in that.
Can I just jump in real quick and take James's thing? He says, I don't think they actually showed the leader of the group. I think they did. They showed the chief of the Tusken Raiders. I think the only one missing was the warrior that we were talking about, but they even showed like the little child gaffy stick as well. Yep. So it really tells us that
and not just the men, but the women and the children too.
The Tusken Raiders got wiped out except for that female warrior.
They got
hold that thought. We're about 5 minutes away from digging into Attack of the Clones, but we would be remiss if we didn't touch on the people who were terrorizing the Watermonger, so he claimed. I'm calling them, and I've heard this otherwhere, the Mod Squad. So these are this is the youth gang that rides on the hover scooters through the streets of Mos Espa. They're referred to as mods in this because they modify themselves with technology. So whereas Luke and Anakin and Fennec have electronic parts because they were injured, they choose to augment themselves almost like the Borg in Star Trek with droid arms and droid eyes and other electronic pieces. And they're also a bit of the Mod Squad in that they look like the mods back in, you know, in the 60s in the UK, and they have that same kind of color palette and hip style. You know, they stick out like a sore thumb. A lot of people didn't like how they really stood out from the rest of the Tatooine landscape. But I think that's kind of the point. You know, Mark and I have been talking throughout the week.
And I
that,
like
you know,
this. Yep.
yeah,
and I
like the whole
friended
point
you.
is that they want to be like off-worlders. You know, Mark and I grew up in a very small town about 2 hours outside of New York City, and there were definitely the kids who wanted to look like the city kids. These are the ones who want to look like the city kids. They're dressed like the folks that we see out on the streets of Coruscant. They just happen to be in the desert. I will gladly admit that the chase was clunky. You know, I think they had to do something at a slightly slower speed, given how fast the train was last week. They couldn't be as fast as the train, but it really it didn't really feel like we were moving that quickly. It was like the Major Domo driving through the streets. You know, it's like you couldn't get that speeder above 10 miles an hour, and the scooters alongside, you know, they weren't moving too quickly either.
It's like that scene in Seinfeld when George is trying to get away on the ECVs. Just
exactly.
Yeah.
Or, you know, in Austin Powers, where the guy is standing there as Austin Powers is like driving up to him on the steamroller, and he's like moving at about 5 miles an hour, and the guy's just standing there yelling, "No!"
It felt like a people mover tour of the streets of Mos Espa just to see every droid that we could possibly find, because we saw a ton of different droids throughout that.
Mouse droids. We
Yeah.
had the rickshaw driver that took Anakin and Padme through the streets.
Mhm.
We got another protocol droid that was very flustered when, you know, again, clearly he could have just like walked to the other side of the road and probably dodged the traffic okay. But I've talked a bunch on this. I'll just end my part and then ask you guys by just saying, like, I actually really like these guys. I think it's something that
I like
I
them.
really like, that they're new, that
Yeah.
they're different, that they're colorful, that there's a new element of that we've never seen in the galaxy before in terms of these cybernetically modified people. I do think the sequence is a little Spy Kids clunky. You know, I expected more out of Mr. Rodriguez, but I'm very excited about this ragtag, you know, weird posse that Boba is pulling together. He's not pulling together traditional folks. He's got Fennec, a killer, 2 clunky but adept Gamorrean guards, and a team of street urchins who are all at his side as he begins to build his army. So, guys, what's your take on the Mod Squad?
I did like the Mod Squad. I thought in concept they were really cool. Individually, I like all of them, and I like the addition. James just said, "Am I off in thinking that they didn't belong on Tatooine?" I got a major 50s primetime vibe with their bikes. Mike, I will admit I had that very same take until you told me they're the hipsters of Tatooine. They do look like they're off-worlders, even though they're not, because they don't want to be at Mos Espa. They want to emulate the cool kids in the center of the universe. They want to be from Coruscant. So their bikes, their outfits, their attire, even their modifications, all of that screams, you know, off-world. And I can accept that. I liked them. I thought she was really great. I thought the actress that portrayed that role was really good.
Sophie Fletcher.
Yeah, I thought that the chase scene conceptually was a great idea. So many people like gave it a hard time because they said Boba's got the jetpack. Why wouldn't you just fly? Remember, he is crew building at this point. He wants to test out his newly formed crew and see what they're capable of. There were a few instances where he also could have handled something that he delegated to Fennec. He's doing that intentionally because remember, he's the crime boss. So any opportunity he has to not get his hands dirty and to wield power and authority without having to like bust skulls, that's the whole point and purpose of it. Could he have flown up and caught the Major Domo within an instant? Yes. I'm sure that if he was really getting away, he would have as well. But he wanted to give these new crew members the opportunity to prove themselves, just like the Gamorreans have been doing, just like Fennec has been doing. So I don't have
a good manager. He's clearly he's gone to the Jack Welch school, and
Yeah.
he's delegating.
Yeah, I mean, And, Brian just said, I think they have potential for sure. I think they'll prove themselves. And that's what that was. They were there to prove themselves. The only problem that I had again was like Mike, you just said, it felt more Spy Kids than it did Star Wars at the point. We just had a high speed train, an adrenaline pumping chase scene on the train. And it felt like we were moving 5 miles an hour at times. And those speeder bikes or those, the swoops, as some people have been calling them, felt like they weren't moving at all. And he was having these tracking shots, which were also because it wasn't moving fast and it was a tracking shot, it was prolonging our time looking at it, and it was making it look like it was going even slower. Conceptually, I liked it. I thought the execution was not the best and clunky. But I don't have a problem with Boba Fett delegating to this new crew and saying, get him. And he's telling them it's like sick. And I think they have a lot of potential. I really like their addition to it. And I kind of like where it's going, that he's adding people. And then it's going to get to the point where, and we talked about it before, Black Chrysanthemum, I think, will also come back and become part of that crew. I think there's some Tuskens that are out there that are still going to come back into the fold. It's still setting up. Remember, we were never supposed to get this series. So this is all extra. Like, we not only did we not need it, we didn't want it at the time, and it's just pure bonus. So I say this to myself too, is relax a little bit. When you get a little frustrated or aggravated at a certain sequence or a certain scene, it's Star Wars, and just be so happy that I'm watching Boba Fett and Fennec Shand take on the Pikes.
Yeah. Brian, Mos Vespa?
No real interest in my part. I didn't like how stereotypical they were they were, the only thing they didn't do was call him Boomer Fett. Like, that was really all that was missing from the entire exchange. There's no work, yet we have all this money to buy droid parts for our bodies, like all this kind of stuff. Nothing in Tatooine is clean except for them and their bikes. I know they're stealing water. I understand that concept. For me, I'm willing to go for the ride, especially with I don't remember his name, Scud or Jason the Red Ranger. Like, I don't know what's going on with him. I thought the keep your eye on him thing was a little too heavy-handed for me. Like,
he apologized for it. It was
well, no, I think they just said it would have been fine, but then pointing out that he said it, I think, is what, I don't know. Like, I'm along for the ride, but I now really get the feeling the Hutts said that they're going back to Nalhutta, which I believe. I think the Rancor, they just didn't want to take it with them, so that's why they gave it to him. The Pike Syndicate, I don't think is the big bad. I am now feeling that there is going to be, Pike Syndicate is the villain of season 1, but it is going to end with a tease of Crimson Dawn and Kira and everything else, and we lead into a season 2. I think that's where we're headed. I do think the Pikes are the season 1 villain, but I don't think they're the overarching villain. I think Crimson Dawn is inevitable.
That's awesome.
1,000%.
So
1,000%. You're right.
So the mod squad, I think that something that got pointed out this week, and there are a number of people who took screen grabs and put them up on Twitter and Instagram and wherever, saying they don't fit in, they're not part of the world, they're not part of the galaxy. But I think Mark put it best. They want to be like they're on Coruscant. And I think one of the neat things about the mod squad is that they are another big shout out to the influence of Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Which, believe it or not, this will make us all feel old, gentlemen. It turns 20 this May. It's been 20 years since Episode 2. It's widely regarded as the worst of the 3 prequel films, at least among others. But I think this might be unfair because, we're going to talk about it in the 15, 20 minutes we have left together. One could argue that this is the single most influential film of the prequels on all of the Star Wars series that followed, from Clone Wars and Bad Batch to Mandalorian and now Book of Boba Fett, and likely Kenobi, which comes to us hopefully in the not so distant future. So I loved Episode 2 when it came out. It has tons of rewatchability in places. There are also plenty of places that I will skip right over. Love story. It's a bit plotting and clumsy sometimes, but I love Episode 2. And so we're not going to go full Star Wars court on Episode 2. So frequent listeners have heard us pass judgment on episodes 8 and 9. We'll save that for another day. But what I think would be great for now is let's discuss the film's influence and our general feelings about it. And we're excited to hear thoughts and questions from our live audience as well. So, one of probably the most obvious things that's in the title of the movie is the foundation of the clone mythology comes from episode 2, where the clones came from, how they were produced, what their role and function was, how they got introduced. They ultimately gave life to one throwaway, mysterious but amazing line from Obi-Wan in A New Hope. How do you guys feel about the influence of, really the genesis of the clone army, and ultimately in turn how it's intertwined with the mythology of the Fett family?
But I want to talk about the love story of Attack of the Clones. Come on, like Sand and Truly Deeply Love You. Come on. No, the stuff in Camino, the stuff in Camino is awesome. Like I rewatched this film just this morning, and when it bounces back and forth between Padme and Anakin on Naboo and whatever they're doing versus what Obi-Wan is doing on Camino and finding a planet that's been erased from the archives, and I don't remember her name in the library, but she's got a great she's got a great role in the Darth Vader comic book series written by Charles Soule. But she's, and just her arrogance and whatever, but then he goes and every, like Ewan McGregor in that scene of yeah, of course, like you were expecting me, like, and then he just kind of pretends like he knows what's going on when he really has no clue. And then we meet Boba and we meet Jango. The way everything is told around Camino, the visuals of Camino are awesome.
Yeah,
I love how they're adapted into animation within the Bad Batch and the Clone Wars as well. Everything on Camino is really, really cool. And the mythos that comes from there of having some clones that like Boba and what we assume Omega to be not accelerated in age, but everybody else is accelerated, seeing them at all that different point, and Sypha Dyas and everything that has to go with there. Darth Tyrannus gets the name drop. Everything within there setting up the lore of the clone guy from, I think we meet him in the first, I think, yeah, it's the first episode of The Mandalorian. When we meet him, he's got the patch on his sleeve because they're gonna do whatever they need with Grogu. Everything with Camino is fascinating to me, and I think it's probably going to end up playing a role in the emergence of whatever Snoke is as well. I think they're really taking the Mandoverse and taking Attack of the Clones and everything with Camino and trying to bring everything together within the entire Star Wars saga and not just the Mandoverse on its own.
So I mean, Brian, you're like definitely on the right track, because so much of this film, it's why we're talking about it. It's been so influential to Filoni specifically, but now Favreau has obviously picked up that mantle. Of all of the films that the Mandoverse has continued to go back to, this is the film that the Mandalorian has chosen to single out and to augment more than anything else. Not just with the cloners and Camino, but so much of the backstory of Boba Fett and Din Djarin and these roots continue to go back to Camino. It really is one of the best parts of the movie. It was one of the best pieces of lore that they added to the Star Wars universe. And Mike, you just said this a minute ago, aside from a singular line from A New Hope where Kenobi mentions I'm fighting with his father in the Clone Wars, we really had no conceptual idea of what that meant. It just sounded amazing. Even in that movie, it sounded amazing. And I remember being a little kid speculating to myself, like thinking that's what I want to see. Like, I don't know what that was, but whatever he just said, that's what I need to see. And where some people really take umbrage with Attack of the Clones, I don't. I don't have many problems with Attack of the Clones. I had more problems with Phantom Menace than I did Attack of the Clones. But even in that, I saw Phantom Menace 5 times in the theater. So how much of a problem could I have had with it? But I read the R.A. Salvatore novelization of Attack of the Clones prior to seeing it in the theaters. And so where Salvatore was just such a brilliant writer and it's such a great novelization, he did such a great job of the inner workings and the monologuing that was going on inside of the characters' heads, which you often will get from a novel or a graphic novel, that there are things that are unsaid on screen that are going on, and they talk about the characters' intentions and maybe some of the thoughts that they were having. And if the actor, might have a look or a feel and they'll get a note from the director of this is your intent, but it's an unspoken thing. Sometimes they can get lost. They can just get lost in the performance, or that nuance is not picked up. The book did such a great job, even with the love story, Brian, of really describing how quickly on screen it happens. People were off put by that, but it was a slower burn in the books where the two of them fall in love with each other, and you can see why by the end of the movie they're getting married. But Camino was it was a standout, and we talked about this when we did our Bad Batch episodes. It's a place that I would gladly go a million times over. It's visually arresting. The Kaminoans themselves are just really intriguing as a race of people, and it's really cool to see that facility in operation and understand like what was going on there.
Yeah.
But I don't think that we're done with cloning or the Kaminoans. I think that again, Brian said
the droids either. I mean, I think the
It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Sorry, I had to get that in there.
No, that dialogue was exactly what it is when you're watching episode 2. It's a brief and annoying distraction from the good stuff. The flip side of it is how well it sets up the droids in the war. So we saw the really clumsy droids in Phantom Menace, but episode 2 brings in some scary droids. It brings in the battle droids. Mark, you brought up the impact of the droids in setting up the Mandalorian and Din Djarin's experience. I mean, that's really scary, seeing those battle droids from a small child's point of view, looking up and hiding as it's destroying your entire village and killing your parents. But all the droids, just seeing what the actual warfare looked like, which then carried forth into all of the series and the other movies, we got to see what war actually looks like in a galaxy far, far away. And
yeah,
it's terrifying. It's these giant mechanical things. It just happens to have, it's kind of like the Terminator, but with a much brighter color palette.
Yeah, I'm go ahead, Mark.
I was gonna say one of the issues I had, at least initially, with the prequel films was how visually different they were from the original trilogy.
It's bold. It sets. We talked earlier about the Mod Squad and the colors and everything. I mean,
yeah,
the look from Camino to Geonosis to all of the other planets. We get a whole different color palette and aesthetic from anything we've ever seen before, and really since in any of the Star Wars films, except for the things that pick up off of what we saw here.
It's easier to understand though, or it's a lot more palatable. I mean, and they've aged. I mean, again, you just said this film is 20 years old come May. As time's gone on, I've appreciated that difference in aesthetic because it does separate the films. All three trilogies, I feel like, have their own look and they have their own feel. But it's a time of elegance. It's a time before the war. It was a time before the fall of the Jedi. And, when we pick up with the New Hope, it's a very small ragtag group of rebels that are trying to scrape together basically like smuggled arms in order to oppose an empire. There aren't good looking ships. There aren't good looking cruisers. Like everything is a hodgepodge army. So, when you look at how polished the clone trooper army is, you can understand that this is the absolute height of the Republic's power and the Jedi Council's power. So I have come to really like that aesthetic and appreciate it. And it makes the fall from grace even that much more dramatic for the Jedi, and the dark period that follows when, other than the Empire, no one had shiny new stuff. Yeah. No one did. Well, I like it. I mean, I like the color palette, and I'm liking seeing those elements brought into projects like Book of Boba Fett.
this is also really where the character of Obi-Wan Kenobi truly gets defined,
Yes.
because Obi-Wan is craggy old man through the original trilogy, and he's wonderful. I mean, he's the sage of the trilogy, but we don't really know a lot about him other than when he says to Yoda, Yoda says Luke is reckless, and Obi-Wan says, so was I, if you remember. And we never got a sense of that. And then, he's just a dude with a rat tail and a fantastic fight scene in Phantom Menace. That's really Qui-Gon's movie. Obi-Wan the detective through episode 2, as you said earlier, Mark, I think is some of the best stuff possible, and where we really get a sense of his wry sense of humor, his little bit of rebellion while also still being a true Templar Knight of the Jedi. Brian, what's your take on how Ewan McGregor puts his stamp on Obi-Wan Kenobi within episode 2, and then what follows into 3, and hopefully the series that we're going to get later this year?
Yeah, I don't really have that much more to add than what you said, other than he really came into his own. I think this is where people realize how much they love, even though much maligned as this particular film is, people know how good Ewan McGregor was in that role. Detective he's telling Anakin, hey, we're here to protect Padme. We're not here to figure out who it is. And then the second he has the opportunity to figure out who it is, he jumps out a window and grabs the droid and goes flying through Coruscant, because he was that reckless. He wants to know just as much as anyone else. We're not done exploring everything within this film until we get Dex's Diner somewhere within the Disney Plus universe as well. I think the character of Dex is hilarious, but just everything with Obi-Wan and how he acts that scene on Camino of saying all the right things, but the GIF, it just says visible confusion, where you can see what he's thinking in his brain, going, how is this possible? How am I the one that's discovering this? How did this ever happen? Yet he's portraying confidence to the Kaminoans that they don't really know anything's up. And I think that Ewan McGregor acted that out perfectly. I think there's going to be, I don't know. I think we're going to explore far more between episode 3 and ties to episode 3 and ties to episode 4 in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. I don't know how much we're going to deal with Camino and cloning within the Obi-Wan series. I do have a form of speculation, if I can put my hat, my Earth Mightiest Weirdos hat. Apparently, the rumor is Moon Knight is going to premiere on March 30th with 2 episodes. We get the trailer for Moon Knight tomorrow night. If it does appear with 2 episodes on March 30th, the reason they would premiere with 2 episodes was so it can wrap on April 27th with 6 episodes, leaving it free and clear for May the 4th, which is a Wednesday this year. I do think we are going to get Kenobi on May the 4th.
I sure hope so.
I think that's what it's coming. But long story short, I love Ewan McGregor, and this is where we learn how much, honestly, it's my favorite Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan Kenobi role. As good as he is in episode 3, I think he's just as good in episode 2.
I mean, for me, even more than the Camino sequence is I love Obi-Wan in the bar on Coruscant. You go ferret him out. Well, where are you going?
You want to buy some death sticks?
You don't want to sell me death sticks.
I don't want to sell you death sticks.
You want to go home and rethink your life.
I want to go home and rethink my life.
It wonderfully echoes what he does in the bar at Mos Eisley later on. Obi-Wan is the master of the bar scene, and the range of emotions that he goes through and the confidence that he has is just so excellent. Mark, any quick thoughts on Obi-Wan?
You guys really knocked it out the park with everything that you said. I mean, I won't blather on. What I will say for any of our viewers or even our listeners, if you haven't, I mean, I know that we're really just talking about Attack of the Clones, but if you have not yet consumed the Clone Wars in its entirety, again, it just does such a nice job. I mean, that series belongs to Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Ahsoka. But I love the way that series then continues to build out Obi-Wan and the relationship that he has with Satine. Obi-Wan is like one of my favorite characters, which, Brian, I am just going to say, if they drop Obi-Wan on May 4th, I will lose my dang mind.
There's no reason not to, in my opinion. Obviously, the reason would be it's not done yet, but
Well,
It
but
just makes too much. If the rumors are
Star
true
Wars Day,
that Moon Knight does drop 2 episodes on March 30th, there's a reason you want to finish. You don't want to have a Marvel show on May the 4th.
think
Not
about this though. But think about this. We really did not get much. When Moon Knight is dropping, we really did not get much to build up Moon Knight. Like we got,
we got
just got
time.
yeah,
Well,
I know.
We got a
month and a
trailer
half.
tomorrow. So
Well, we have a trailer tomorrow, but my point being is I don't know if they want to like even Book of Boba Fett. Book of Boba Fett went from being like very mysterious and like shrouded in mystery. We knew we were getting it, but we really didn't start to get heavy PR for it really until like 3 weeks prior. I think that that's what they're going to do with a lot of these Disney Plus series. So that way they get a little bit of wiggle room if they need to. I think that you're probably onto something that I think you're probably going to get a Star Wars project, a big one for May 4th.
but I think Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to be marketed like nothing we've ever seen since The Mandalorian season 1 when Disney Plus dropped. I think the marketing for Kenobi is going to annoy some people.
Really? Well,
I can live with that. I can live
I don't
with
wanna
that.
watch it, though.
Give
I
me
don't-
all of it.
Yeah, I don't want to see trailers until we're into the show.
Well, they didn't give away that much, as you guys have pointed out before. There was a lot of Mando. They didn't give much away in that. Last thing to touch on before we bring this thing home, the action style and the duels in episode 2 are some of the best. The fight in the pit on Geonosis, the Jedi battle in the same Coliseum on Geonosis, and then I think I have probably rewatched the lightsaber duels in Attack of the Clones as many times as any that I've ever watched anywhere. Both Anakin and Obi-Wan together taking on Dooku, then ultimately, as Mark, as we like to say, fan service done right, when Yoda breaks out his lightsaber, when we finally see how this little green friend is ultimately the greatest swordsman in the galaxy. I love what even the scene that you referenced earlier, the speeder scene through the streets of Coruscant when Obi-Wan leaps out a window. There's so much cool stuff that this does. Or maybe the last one that I'll just shout out, and Brian, you can put it to effect. The space chase scene with Jango and Obi-Wan and the seismic charge that Jango drops. The single greatest sound effect in the Star Wars galaxy. The action in Attack of the Clones is out of this world fantastic.
Wait, I thought the greatest soundtrack was the Wilhelm scream.
Well, yeah, you have to have
I'll acquiesce.
They're both good.
They're both good.
They're both excellent, and they have so many applications and so many conversations. I love the action scenes in this movie. Again, I can skip them, dancing like the hills are alive to the sound of Star Wars and the love scenes, but the action scenes and the detective story around it, for me, make Attack of the Clones really exciting. I don't know how you guys feel.
Yeah, the chase sequence with Zam Wessel, and then this mysterious Mandalorian killing her with a poison dart was really cool. The fight on the platform of Camino was unlike anything that we'd ever seen, and it's the first time that you got to see a Mandalorian or a pseudo Mandalorian face off against the Jedi and not only hold his own, but in many ways prevail in that encounter between the two of them.
Dude, I watched that again recently. Sorry, I just watched that again recently. A detail that I'd missed for 20 years is that when Mace cuts off Jango's head, Jango tries to take off. He tries to fire his jetpack off, but it's been damaged by the reek. Details are so good.
Yeah, it gets damaged, and that's why he can't go airborne, is because when he goes and falls under the reek.
Well, I knew it was damaged from that, but it's the fact that he actually tries to take off and it won't fire as Mace is spinning around and giving him a samurai haircut.
Yeah, just great stuff. I mean, the battle on Geonosis. I mean, again, people, unfortunately, purely because they don't like the love story of the film, they say that Attack of the Clones is not a good movie. It gives us some of the best Star Wars action that we had ever had. I mean, they took the action from the Phantom Menace and it literally was like, hold my beer. I mean, we're going to give you you thought that the duel between Darth Maul, Obi-Wan, and Qui-Gon was good. Yoda has a lightsaber. Oh, and by the way, he can still use this thing. And I just love that portion where, you know, their force abilities are so advanced. Him and Dooku kind of acknowledge, they just do a tip of the cap and it's like, all right, listen, we can do this all day. And then Dooku actually thinks he's got one up on him. And he's like, let's solve this with lightsabers. And you're just sitting there like, oh, that's not fair. And then Yoda starts flipping and flopping all over the place. And you're like, it's just fan service done right. And it didn't seem forced. And even, you know, when you get that again in the next film in Sith, like, again, it's just so gratifying to see him murking clones in front of the Jedi Temple. And I loved it, man.
And that's one of that is, aside from the portal scene and you know, Steve grabbing Captain America grabbing the hammer, that is Yoda pulling his lightsaber is probably the loudest applause scene I've ever heard in a movie theater.
That was like, yeah, it was an oh crap moment. It was like, oh,
people went ape. They went nuts. I don't know. Brian, do you have some favorite action stuff in this movie, or do you think where does this rack up for you?
As much as I don't necessarily care for the lava buckets and everything around there, the gladiator scene on Geonosis, I really like that one, and it starts with Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's tied up, and they're like, "We came to rescue," and he's like, "Good job." I think that's so funny. I think that is so funny. But no, like overall, like Attack of the Clones, you said it earlier, is widely regarded as the worst of the three prequels. I would put it through third of three, but that isn't to say that I don't want to watch this movie. That there's a complete difference there. I will watch any of the 11 Star Wars films over any of them. There's one exception that I would put at the end, but that's not the time or the place.
Gentlemen, when we are finished with the Book of Boba Fett show idea, we have to do the our top 10 favorite moments from the prequel trilogy. Moments, just like scenes, and we got to do that. Book it.
Brian,
Death sticks.
Yeah, Brian, I'll give you one already. Brian, hit the sound again.
Which one?
Oh,
there we go. Well, it was more the first one. So we'll save our overall feelings on Attack of the Clones for another day. But we couldn't go much farther into Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett, without acknowledging the influence here, especially given the emergence of the red, the yellow, the green, the blue, the Mod Squad. So, gents, any
comment right there,
and an excellent comment from our friend Brian Pohl, a Star Wars droid draft. That's a great idea. We've done our Mount Rushmores of creatures and lightsaber duels, but that's a great idea. Gents, anything else to add before we bid our friends adieu?
Just again, if you like what you hear, smash the subscribe button. We are available everywhere you can find your podcasts. If you are already one of our audio subscribers and you want to hang out with us live and a little bit of crowd interaction, we've had some great conversations that are going on in the comments between Star Wars fans, that even if the comments aren't pulled on air, this is a chance for us to get together as a Star Wars community, hang out every single week. This show has always been about three guys who have always been about Star Wars, connecting with that 7-year-old sitting on their living room floor again and becoming that 7-year-old for at least an hour every other week and just talking about that one thing that has transcended space and time in their lives, which is Star Wars. So thanks for hanging out with us, man.
And just remember, one bad CGI and slow chase scene does not make an entire show. Don't bail on the Book of Boba Fett because you just didn't like the last 10 minutes of this week's episode. There's a lot more that's coming, and there's going to be some really, really good stuff. Again, I think we're headed toward a season 2 in Crimson Dawn and everything else that's coming, but don't just make such a rash decision of that was bad, so the show is bad.
And and to that end, remember, everyone was ready to bail after the first episode because it was slower than they had thought it was going to be. And then the second episode, all of a sudden, everyone was saying, you know, like, genius, brilliant, this is the greatest show ever. Shows will ebb and flow. Like every single show, it's not going to be pure action and pure adrenaline every single week.
And Mando had some funky ones. I'm not a big fan of episode 4 of The Mandalorian when they go and do the classic Western trope the gunslinger, the random gunslinger that comes in to teach the villagers how to fight, and we get the three amigos in space.
It's still better than the episode that came after it.
Well,
it's better. Well, Brian would say it's better than the episode "The Gunslinger" because
fair
his
enough.
name.
But I think we forget, because they're just Mando season 2 was just so amazing, and there are so many good things even in Mando season 1 that we forget that had some potential bumps along the way as well. So I appreciate you saying that, Brian. I think it's we love it, warts and all. And I think the best is still yet to come with the 4 episodes we've still got remaining here in Book of Boba Fett. So
2 of which one directed by Favreau, one directed by Filoni.
Yeah,
Bryce Dallas Howard, and I can't remember the other one. Oh, Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah, but no, we still got another Rodriguez, which I think is going to be sure to deliver. So I'd say come back this Wednesday to watch Book of Boba Fett episode 4, and then come back here to YouTube next Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, to join me and Brian and Mark in our galaxy far, far away. Share alike and like this podcast. Spread the word. And we will see you right here next week again for Babu's Frickin' Podcast. Until then, may the force be with you.
Always.
Always.